Over the past few weeks, Japan has experienced some major travel updates that you need to know about, especially if you'll be coming here in the near future. Tourism numbers are forecasted to break records this year, major tourist attractions like Mt Fuji are about to change forever, and travel information regarding the recent Japan earthquake are just a few of the several important updates you need to know about. So without further delay, let's get started so we can cover all this essential info you need to know. If you are overwhelmed with planning your trip to Japan and need some help, well, I've got some good news for you. And that good news would be my new business, Hidden Japan Journeys. After years of living in Japan, I have gained a wealth of knowledge about how to easily get around and help plan your trip as efficiently as possible. If you're interested, contact me on my business email, which you'll find right here, or go to my website in the description below. Japan is projected to have a record-breaking amount of tourists visit in 2024. 2023 was the first year that Japan was fully open for tourists, and it is very clear that visitors from around the world took full advantage of that. While the first few months of 2023 were trending below the pre-pandemic level of visitors, this was quickly reversed. By the second half of the year, Japan saw a massive resurgence of tourists, with the last few months not only meeting the same level of pre-pandemic tourists, but also exceeding those numbers and going on to break records by the end of the year. And this trend doesn't appear to be slowing down either, as the government predicts the country to experience a record-breaking level of tourists for the year, forecasting that over 33 million visitors will arrive in Japan during 2024. And what's even more shocking is these numbers don't even include the Chinese tourists, who have not even made their full return yet. So with all these people returning to Japan, it should go without saying that hotels, amusement parks, and iconic venues are going to just be that much harder to book in the near future. So as I've been saying for the past year, make sure you book everything you can well in advance. And this massive influx of tourists, while helpful for the economy, has not come without its consequences as well. Famous tourist attractions throughout Japan are beginning to put limits and fees on its visitors. Like I mentioned earlier, as Japan continues to see increasing volumes of tourists, over-tourism problems have begun plaguing some of the more traveled and famous sites. For example, Kyoto has seen such a large influx of tourists that the city discontinued certain tourist services and created helpful websites to try and manage the flow of visitors. This has also been the case with Miyajima, which is home to the World Heritage Site of Itsukushima Shrine. Because of the massive resurgence of tourists, the island has implemented a 100 yen tax, which is less than $1 to visit the island. And this fee is mostly to cover the costs of maintenance and upkeep for the shrine and public facilities. But while this is a pretty negligible fee that is going towards an appropriate cause, this still highlights the fact that these famous sites are beginning to feel the pressures of over-tourism. But this relatively benign policy is nothing compared to the measures that they are going to put in place for Mt Fuji this coming summer. These new limitations, which will start on the 1st of July this year, will include a 4,000 daily visitor cap and a fee to hike the Yoshida side of the trail. This is all a result of the unprecedented level of tourists the mountain experienced last year, resulting in excessive litter and public facilities being destroyed due to overcapacity. It really is sad to hear that people would litter and disrespect such an iconic and sacred site. But for any of you that might be upset with these new limitations and fees, well, unfortunately, you're just gonna have to blame it on those irresponsible people who essentially ruined it for everyone else. With all that in mind, if you do intend on hiking the trail this summer, be sure to get there early, as you definitely don't want to make your way all the way to the mountain only to be turned away because they hit their visitor cap. A couple weeks ago, Japan's Meteorological Corporation released its cherry blossom forecast for 2024. For the notable cities that you will all most likely be visiting, the Sakura trees will start blooming around the 18th to 20th of March to about the 1st of April. And while most of you might not realize it by just looking at the photo, residents and veteran tourists will recognize that the blooming dates are a little earlier than normal. And that's because of the unusually hot weather that has not only been affecting Japan, but the entire world. This heat made Japan's summer unbearable last year, and this lingering warm weather is not a good sign of things to come for 2024. But I'll be keeping a close eye on Japan's weather and be sure to let you know if there are any major changes as we get closer to the summer months. Kanazawa City and its tourist industry are facing some serious rough patches in the near future. According to the Japan Times article, Kanazawa City has recently been hit by a wave of trip cancellations as a result of the massive earthquake that hit back in early January. For anyone that might not know, on New Year's Day, Japan experienced one of its worst earthquakes since the Great 2011 Tohoku earthquake, rocking the Noto Peninsula and causing catastrophic damage to the region. Luckily, despite Despite the terrible damage Noto Peninsula experienced, Kanazawa City, which is only a little south of the devastated region, was relatively unaffected. Many of its major attractions have reopened this past week and are ready to receive tourists once again. However, despite Kanazawa being largely unaffected, that hasn't prevented the massive shortage of tourists, as people are still reluctant to visit the city due to the perceived damage it received during the earthquake and the slight risk that aftershocks could occur. This is putting some serious strain on a lot of businesses in the area, as they are having to limit their work hours or even close down temporarily due to a lack of visitors. The businesses are hoping that tourists will return soon so they can get their economy back on track and help with the recovery efforts. But they are also torn because they understand everyone's hesitation to return so soon. And I can also sympathize with the dilemma that these business owners are facing right now. They definitely want people to return so they can get their lives back to normal, but they also understand that people are afraid due to the risk of an aftershock that could potentially happen while they're visiting. And if you had plans to visit this city but aren't sure what to do anymore, here's what I would personally do. If I had plans to visit Kanazawa in the near future, I personally would feel comfortable with going there. I feel like the risk of an aftershock, while still definitely a possibility, is a little limited. At least an aftershock that would be devastating enough to put me at risk. And on top of that, since everyone is so afraid to travel there, this could be the perfect opportunity to visit the city with almost no tourists. But this is just my take on what I would do, as it is ultimately up to you to decide what your risk tolerance is, not just to this situation, but any scenario. The Japanese yen continues to remain weak against the US dollar, at least for now. While the yen looks like it will be a bargain for Americans and some other countries for the next few months, this could change soon as the Bank of Japan considers raising their monetary interest rate for the first time in 7 years. While I could make a whole video explaining how a country's monetary policy could affect the strength of their own currency, just know that the higher the interest rates are for a country's monetary policy, the stronger their currency will generally be. Along with that, the US government has finally announced it will likely be cutting its interest rates multiple times over the course of 2024. So if you combine these two facts together, it likely means not only will the US dollar get weaker, but the Japanese yen will get stronger, causing the value of the dollar to weaken quickly. As to how soon this will all be happening, it's kind of hard to tell right now. It really will depend on when the US decides to finally cut its interest rates and when Japan finally decides to increase its interest rates. But by the end of 2024, I will not be surprised if the US dollar loses some substantial strength against the Japanese yen. So with all of these factors in mind, to all of you who are still pondering of when the best time to visit Japan is, well, the answer to that is pretty simple, and that would be to visit Japan now. With more and more tourists arriving month over month and the likelihood that the yen will get stronger as 2024 progresses, now is the time to visit, or at your earliest opportunity. Don't miss out on traveling to Japan before all these unique opportunities go away, as there is a chance they will not come back. Unless another pandemic happens, and we all know we don't want that to happen. Email me to ask about my Japan planning services. Like this video if you found it useful. Subscribe for more videos about Japan, and check out my affiliate links in the description below for when you plan your next trip to Japan. Alright, that's gonna do it for now, but until next time, I'll see you then.